And we're back. A time for the current affairs segment. We take a look at the political events of the day and so much more that is happening in regards to policies and shaping up of the nation. And joining us for this session is Gloria Oroba, who's also, of course, a youth leader. We have Philip Mwangale, who's a lawyer. And in studio with me is Honorable Dr. David Ole Sankok. Good morning, Mheshimiwa.
Good morning to you.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
The two others are joining us via Skype. Philip and Gloria, good morning.
Good morning, Linda.
You're well?
Good morning to you, Linda.
All right, good to have you. So the conversation kicks on, and I mean, this is something that has been going on for the better part of the week, at least since Monday, or the better part of the weekend. We're treated to be to so much politics and utterances from different key leaders. Probably, just pinpoint our scenario of any, political event. But in what many argue, this would be a recipe for a disaster in the event that it is not well managed. So before we came on board, I was having a conversation with Mheshimiwa, trying to, just understand. I mean, are we taking it way above what it should be? Are the politicians pulling this way above? But according to him, he says, this is just politics. Is it just politics, looking at the utterances, looking at the differences that we've witnessed over the past few months in regards to matters politics at a time when we are dealing with COVID-19, Mheshimiwa?
Politics is like that. And we expect that, especially when there is realignment, rearrangement for succession. And to this point, I don't think we have gone to a situation where we are saying that we are risking as a nation. It is immoral for us to do politics, especially when we have an international pandemic of COVID-19 magnitude.
Right.
It will have been good for us to tone down a bit and save Kenyan lives. But having said that, corruption in KEMSA and all the underdealings that are happening will not allow leaders who have been elected to come out and point out that this money is meant to save Kenyans.
Yeah.
It is meant for healthcare. It was not meant for the pockets of a few. But of course, corruption normally fight back. And when it fight back, then it become a game of you versus them.
All right.
The right leaders who are pointing out what they are elected to do, because they are elected to represent the people.
Okay.
One of the representation of the people is to make sure that Kenyans have their fundamental right to health. Now, if you pinpoint, then of course corruption will fight back. So I still think it is still manageable. It's not out of hand, and we have witnessed even more rhetorics before, like when we had in 2000 and I think 2013, where or 2007. Where a certain clique of politicians were dividing this country into two.
All right, so you have said that this is division.
41 versus 1.
Yeah.
We have not gone there. Okay. In fact, that was worse.
Oh,
and
so
we
this
know
is way
we will
better.
not go there.
All right.
We will not go there.
Okay, Mheshimiwa, before I loop in Gloria and Philip, I think it's important that we pick this story so it shapes the conversation on what way forward. And Emurua Dikir Joanna Ngeno will spend, that is the Member of Parliament, Emurua Dikir Joanna Ngeno will spend 2 more nights in custody. That is as of yesterday, as he awaits his bail ruling on Thursday this week. Joanna Ngeno was presented to court or in court after Director of Public Prosecution, that is Nordin Haji, conferred charges against him of hate speech and incitement against him. So let's take a look at that, and we get reactions from Philip and Gloria.
For the next 2 days, the cold police cells of Nakuru Central Police Station will be the home to Emurua Dikir Joanna Ngeno, who was arraigned on Tuesday on 2 counts of hate speech and incitement. Appearing before Chief Magistrate Elizabeth Lusui, Ngeno pleaded not guilty to 2 charges conferred against him by the Director of Public Prosecution, Nordin Haji. In a statement to newsrooms Tuesday morning, DPP said the MP uttered words which were threatening, abusive and insulting, and intended or were likely to stir up ethnic animosity amongst communities residing within Transmara area. The DPP said there was sufficient evidence to initiate the prosecution of the MP under the National Cohesion and Integration Act of 2008 and the Penal Code Cap 63 laws of Kenya. Ng'eno's lawyer Kimutai Bosek wanted him released on reasonable bail terms, arguing that he has a constitutional right, he is not a flight risk, and the prosecution did not provide any compelling reason to have him detained.
The accused person, as I indicated, is an honorable member of parliament. Therefore, a state officer under the provisions of our constitution is not a flight risk.
Later, demos followed in Nakuru town with protesters calling for respect to President Uhuru Kenyatta as a head of state. The KANU party now want the MP to resign or he faces forceful expulsion over his insightful and unsavory remarks. KANU Secretary General Nick Salat says Ng'eno has crossed the red line and the party cannot tolerate him any longer.
The party cannot tolerate this kind of uncivilized conduct from a person who carries the flag, its flag, and benefits from its brand. In this regard, the party finds Honorable Ng'eno's membership in KANU unattainable and therefore calls upon him to resign.
Matamshi ya kuropokwa ya kihuni ni mambo ambayo katika chama cha KANU hayakubaliki. Mheshimiwa Johana, sisi tumeosha mkono. Hana nafasi katika chama ambacho kinaamini kuhusu heshima ya rais wa nchi.
Ng'eno uttered the insightful remarks Sunday at Olsgos Sophia Village, castigating President Uhuru Kenyatta for allegedly sidelining his deputy. Mwangi Maina, TV47, Nairobi.
And different reactions from different people, including leaders. Later on, we'll be taking a look at what some of the leaders have said in regards to the same. But coming to you, Philip and Gloria, honestly, while our Honorable Sankok would argue that, we've not gotten to that point where, this is that heated, that we should get worried. I mean, that it's cause for alarm. With the kind of reactions that we've witnessed, from Monday all the way to today, do you suppose then that, that is just politics? Gloria?
I think one of the things that is being called upon is that Kenyans in general must respect the office. The office being the office of the deputy president, the office of the president, and the office of cabinet secretaries and all other offices that we have within government. But that does not mean that we lose sight on the content that is being spewed out. The manner with which it was done, I mean, it's questionable. We could say there are better ways to do that. But let's not lose sight on the reaction of the audience. The reaction of the Kenyans is that you have one side of the divide saying, you respect our president, respect the office holder, you cannot start abusing the mother of the president and a former first lady. And then you have a majority of people out here saying, yes, while this might be the case, we actually truly believe that all Kenyans should be governed with a certain equality. So the message that Ng'eno was trying to put out is that it is time that all Kenyans must respect each other, that we must be treated equally, that there's a lot of things that are going on, but let's not lose sight that we are still in a democratic nation. Now, the other thing that I have to point out is that while Ng'eno is sitting on remand and actually waiting for the case to start and all this legal procedure, we must remember that we just celebrated 10 years of our constitution, and we were talking about the wins of this constitution, Katiba 10, and we were talking about how far we've come with the implementation to the point that now we are looking at a referendum or reforms. And now I have to bring to the attention, what about the bills of rights? Because the Bill of Rights that we have is that we have one of them that says freedom of expression, that you're free to seek, receive, or impart ideas, and that or artistic creativity and things like academic freedom.
Gloria,
yes,
allow me to look in, Philip. Gloria, Allow me to loop in Philip on that very note. He's our lawyer, and he would probably be able to, tell us whether this is well understood by the people of Kenya. When we're talking about freedom of expression, what exactly does it mean? And listening to the leaders and the utterances, do you suppose then that they surpassed what one would, speak of, as freedom of expression? I mean, or they were within the lines of the same?
Thank you, Linda. First of all, I must recognize that the Constitution gives us that freedom, as Gloria has mentioned. Yeah. But like all the other freedoms in the Bill of Rights, Chapter 4 of the Bill of Rights, freedom of expression and freedom of speech is not an absolute freedom. It is not an absolute right. It can be limited. And especially when we're talking about such utterances, that freedom is within the confines of the law. And in this case, you must make sure that your expression and your speech does not offend Section 96 of the Penal Code. Your speech that means your speech is not insightful. You're not inciting other people to violence. And more specifically, in the case of the politicians this time, and first I must say it is not just this time, as Honorable has mentioned, which is unfortunate again. This is the nature of our politics. We have politicians all day. That is what they do. They use inflammatory statements, they are insulting. And so I was going to mention that the other boundary that is set in terms of freedom of expression and speech is what the NCIC Act recognizes as abusive and insulting language.
All right.
We also have to go to the yes.
Okay, so why should this then culminate to, a point whereby some are calling upon the Deputy President William Ruto to come and, apologize, because it is assumed that these people were speaking on behalf of him?
Linda, let me make some point very clear.
Yeah.
One is that there is freedom of speech.
Yeah.
But your freedom of speech and expression stop where my freedom start.
Okay.
You can't abuse me simply because you have a freedom of speech. Mm-hmm. That is first.
Right.
Secondly, I know my president. I know my deputy president. My president is a man of integrity. Mm-hmm. He can't send anybody to speak on his behalf.
Oh, yeah?
He have his own mouth.
David Murathi, they say
he will speak on his behalf.
Okay.
William Ruto is also a leader elected in this country as a conjoined twin with Uhuru Kenyatta. Mm-hmm. And he have his own mouth.
Right.
I'm 100% sure that he can ever send anybody to speak on his behalf. Mm-hmm. You have always people of the Fourth Estate invited the president to your studios.
Right.
Even vernacular studios. Mm-hmm. They have always came to express what they believe is the direction that they want to take this country to. Mm-hmm. So none of them will send any leader, elected leaders or not elected leaders or religious leaders to speak on their behalf. Mm-hmm. So anybody saying that Ruto had sent Oscar Sudi or the president had sent David Murathi, those leaders are displaying their ignorance and stupidity in public.
All right, so let's listen into some of these leaders.
Yes, that is what I was saying.
Yeah.
To make those points very clear.
Very clear.
Yes, and it should be very clear. Mm-hmm. But again, when it comes to abusing somebody's mother, and not only an ordinary mother, let us respect some offices. This is a grandmother. Mm-hmm. Is a mother to many.
Right.
She is our founding first lady. She have never been involved in any political activities.
Oh, yeah?
The last time I saw her in public was when she was blessing Uhuru and blessing Ruto as the sons of this country to take up the leadership. When they were going to ICC, I also see her severally when there is a memorial of the late husband, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. She is not in politics. Why should somebody drag her name into that political scenario?
Right.
Surely, Linda, that was uncalled for. And I think everybody should carry their own cross. But let us remember that it is also ignorant for anybody to use it as a political mileage to claim that so and so. You know, when they are claiming, I heard somebody saying, and I think you will play that clip, that Ruto should tame his dog. Yes. Who is a dog? An elected leader. You know, even that elected leader, whether it is Ngeno, whether it's Oscar Sudi, they were elected by the people. They have the people they represent. I think somebody who referred to a leader elected as a dog should also be in jail now.
Hence my question. I mean, honestly, how then can we just say that this is politics? Because some of the leaders equally argue that this might fuel animosity. It's the last thing that we want as a country, especially right now when we're dealing with COVID. And having come from the 2000 and 2008 experience, many argue that we have learned and it's not the direction that we are taking. But then again, these insightful utterances have gotten us to a bad point before. Let's listen into this, Mheshimiwa, and come back.
ODM leader Raila Odinga is among leaders who condemn the remarks by Ruto allies Johana Ngeno of Emurua Dikir and Kapsaret's Oscar Sudi. Odinga warning the leaders against remarks that can lead the country into violence.
You have gone to war in 1992, 97, and 2007. Nobody should try to take this country to war again because of politics.
A section of women leaders led by Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru have also castigated the remarks, terming them as insults to the former First Lady. The legislatures are now seeking for an apology over the alleged remarks by the duo.
And ask politicians to direct their responses and attacks, if need be, to their fellow politicians. We demand stern legal action against the perpetrators. And we also demand for an apology to the mother of the nation.
Deputy President William Ruto in his Twitter handle had said that leaders should exercise restraint and avoid insults and bad language against other Kenyans. A section of lawmakers allied to the DP have distanced themselves from utterances made by the Emurua Dikir lawmaker Johana Ngeno and his Kapsaret counterpart Oscar Sudi.
Please go back, the two of you, go and sit and agree na mtuambie vile tutaenda mbele kwa Jamhuri ya Kenya. Mimi nataka niombe msamaha nikiwa kiongozi wa hapa Uasin Gishu. As young leaders, we distance ourselves completely kulingana na hiyo matusi ambayo ilisema.
Na mimi nasema hivi, watu wengine wasitumie advantage ya watu wengine. Kama kuna mjumbe aliongea namna hiyo, sio Ruto aliongea, ni mtu aliongea binafsi. Mngangana naye huko. Murale akiongea, sio Kenyatta ameongea.
The National Assembly Security Committee is also reading from the same scripts in condemning the utterances.
What we heard from Johana Ngeno and Oscar Sudi yesterday was not a disagreement with President Uhuru Kenyatta. It was a personal attack and an insult to not only the president, but also members of his family, more so his mother.
Under no circumstance will we allow this country to go to the dogs because of the leaders of this country.
ANC party says such utterances can lead the country into violence, calling on leaders to use other ways of resolving their differences.
And then we can have leaders again beginning to speak and beat the drumbeats of war and violence and insults when we have just come out of hell. Muwaombee washindwe kabisa.
Sisi hatutakuwa wale vijana kama wale vijana ambao tumeona juzi wakitukana mama ya rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya. Tunataka tuwe vijana wa nidhamu. So mimi ningependa kukashifu kwanza jambo hilo la vijana na viongozi vijana kupeana cheche za matusi kila wakati.
And it's a shame. It's a shame. Great shame for leaders to abuse women. And I stand in this Church of God as a woman, County MP for Vihiga, a woman of God, an elder of the church. I want to repent on behalf of these people who are shouting.
In a statement to Newsroom, the National Police Service Inspector General Hilary Mutyambai says the police department will not spare any politician fueling violence. Nancy Kimuyu, TV 47.
Well, in unison, there's that acknowledgement that, this was a wrong move coming from these key leaders. But like, Honorable David Senkok says that, there are others also have come, again, equally abusing these characters. Mheshimiwa, briefly, before you come in, let's allow Gloria say something. Or you wanted to say something before we look?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Yeah, these two leaders are members of parliament. Yeah. And I also sit in the chair of parliament. And I want to apologize to the First family on their behalf, because we are ashamed as members of parliament and as leaders who sit with these leaders together. I think it was uncalled for, and we do apologize sincerely to the First family, and we request them to forgive parliament for such utterances. At the same breath, I also, it's funny. When the leader of opposition, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, the former Prime Minister, saying that we were at war in 1992, 1997, 2007, and in fact even 2013 we're almost there, and in 2017 where there was a fake swearing in. And I think he should also have gone ahead and be sincere to Kenyans and mention that there was one single denominator of that violence in his own name, that it appeared in the ballot box. And whenever in 2002, and that's why he skipped 2002, because he was not in the ballot box. Whenever he was not in the ballot box, there was no violence in Kenya. So he should be sincere to Kenyans and say that in 2022, the outcome of the election, he will accept. It's funny, Linda, when people sit in the podium and always say, we didn't have the system, Raila have been winning election, it have always been stolen. Who have been stealing your election? All right. Well, let's hear what Gloria has to say about that. Yeah. And should we again bury our heads in the sand and say that it's all good? These utterances might not land us anywhere where we've been before. I mean, is it hypocritical for Baba to say that, Gloria?
I think if we're going to call a press conference every time a politician is in disagreement with another politician, we will not do any work in this country. Just yesterday, Raphael Tuju was actually on air calling the MP that is an intellectual dwarf, saying that, and that to me is abusive. That to me also surmounts to abusing an elected, respectable leader. Now, should we then now send also the police to go and arrest him because he's also influencing, he's instigating some sort of propaganda? Because it's propaganda when you call someone an intellectual dwarf when this person has actually been elected by a group of people to the extent that he is now an MP. He has a master's. He has a master's from University of Nairobi. He has a degree from another university. So to me, if we are going to call press conferences and seek apologies from different parts of the divide every time a politician disagrees with another politician, we are going to be completely swayed away from what we are supposed to be doing as government. And when I was talking about the rights that we had, for me, I'm waiting to see where they are going to prove that this is incitement to violence, that this was propaganda, that this was hate speech, that this was an ethnic incitement. Once that has been proven, then we can say, yes, please, Mheshimiwa Ngeno, please go in, this is what you've done, and we have proven that this is it. But don't lose sight on why these topics are starting to be discussed at this time. We're in a heightened political period, and Kenyans are actually very frustrated with the COVID-19 scandals that are going ahead, the economy that has been really, put in a difficult place. The youth have lost their jobs. So why is it that it's this time when you mention that we are all equal, all Kenyans should be treated equal, mama ya nani si mkubwa kuliko mama ya nani, and respect must cut across, then Kenyans are very heightened because they literally have been backed up to a corner where they are expecting their leaders to focus on their issues and not to focus on whose mother has been abused.
And on that note, Yes, on that note, Philip, in undertones, there is this argument that, most of us are just coming out in camera to condemn this, but deep down, most of the Kenyans will probably argue the same way as these leaders would have argued. Do you suppose it could be the case?
I was going to start on that point actually, but first let me begin by saying that the mere fact that we are conflicted on whether what these leaders have said is right or wrong is sad in itself, because if we are arguing about whether an abuse is an abuse, whether an insult is an insult, then it means there is something wrong with our moral software, and that is a very big. But the other bit that is also important, as we are looking at how they expressed themselves and the specific words they used, we must also look at what is the underlying issue. What are they speaking about? We must, and I'm not saying we must not hold them to account. We must, and I want to disagree with Gloria that they must only be found to have incited people to violence. The mere fact that they used insulting and abusive language is enough to warrant charges against them. That in itself, given that they are leaders. And second, we must now go beyond the way they expressed themselves and look at the underlying issues. What is it they are complaining about? After we have already held them to account. Because if we do not look at those underlying issues, we will be content with other people expressing themselves in subtle manners. And in the way that you said, some Kenyans hold the same opinion, though they will not come out and speak in the manner that Sudi and Johanna Ngeno and others have spoken before. So we must get away from just looking at sideshows and looking at just the top layer of our issues. We must now delve into the problem. Yes, we have handled the way they have expressed themselves. That is also a problem, but we must also look at the underlying issues. Why are they complaining? Why is it that every time around elections we argue about the same thing? Linda.
And yes, this speaks of the underlying issues, Mheshimiwa. Sorry?
If we're going to focus on just the moment of as long as it's abuse, at that point, whether it's insightful or not, then they should be held accountable. Why are we not seeing Mheshimiwa Babu Owino being arrested? Why are we not seeing Raphael Tuju being arrested? Because Raphael Tuju yesterday abused a person, calling them an intellectual dwarf. Then we'll end up arresting all the politicians, because while they are politicking, half the time... Yes.
Oh, we should.
So let the law catch us.
Well, and I agree that this then shows that there is an underlying problem that is not being addressed. And while we are looking at the underlying problem, Mheshimiwa should be able to tell us now that he sits in Parliament. And it equally paints a scenario or the fact that the rift in Jubilee is getting bigger. That also could be an underlying problem, Honorable Sankok.
In any political party, there is always some rift. There was NASA also, and Kalonzo and the principals, are no longer together. And it did not cause any anxiety. But because of succession politics and rift, perceived rift and Jubilee, because for me, perceived. Because, it is exaggerated.
Is it? Your leaders have acknowledged that, yes, the rift is there. Deputy President recently, acknowledged after saying it's perceived for the longest of time.
Have the president, the party leader, said that there is a division in Jubilee?
Well,
no. There is perceived, and I know the deputy president have said there is perceived rift in Jubilee. But for me, I can assure you, Linda, that Jubilee is still a party to reckon with. They have a few disgruntled figures, and it is normal. In a democracy, we can't all have the same opinion. There are people who say that the Big Four agenda should not have come at this time. We should have completed with Vision 2030. There are those who said the Big Four agenda should be achieved this way. There are those, in any political party, there are such. The only thing that I want to condemn today and say that I will never again stand and see anybody claiming that so and so won the election and the election was stolen because he's insinuating that my president is a thief. And I was there during the campaign of 2017 and 2013.
It was free and fair.
We went to Kenyans, we requested for their votes. These guys were in conferences and we won the hearts of Kenyans. We won the votes. Even the Supreme Court verdict said it is the process but not the will of the people.
But the very same party, in the spirit of BBI, acknowledges that there is need for change and adjustments to ensure that we attain electoral justice. So clearly acknowledging that there's been spots of electoral injustice in the country. So how then
there have been spots of electoral injustice, especially by not accepting the outcome.
Yeah,
that is one. Probably some little processes of relaying the verdict and the will of the people, but we have not said that the general outcome was any bad. It was okay. So for us, we are as a party, we still stand for a political party that unites all Kenyans. That is it.
Philip and Gloria, your silence tells me that you are in agreement with what Honorable Sankok says, that indeed Right Honorable Raila Odinga, I want to believe that's that's the person he's referring to. Is the person who's been crying foul every other time, and he says he will not stand to listen or to hear anybody else saying that this is it, or they have played foul on me, or my votes have been stolen. Are you in agreement?
I want to say that if Jubilee Party is saying there are no underlying issues, then why are they pushing for this Building Bridges initiative? Because that Building Bridges initiative has a 9-point agenda, most of which is attached to the fact that the last election did not culminate in a way that we would have that national cohesion. So the problem that you're seeing is that Jubilee as a party, and from the party leader to the SG, all of them, they have not decided which position they want to take. If they are saying that we are okay, there are no underlying issues, we won the election legit, square and fair, which is indeed the truth, then why would they go and shake former Prime Minister Raila Odinga's hand in the pretense of now we are pushing for this Building Bridges initiative to ensure that we have an election where we have a win-win, everybody wins. You cannot have an election where everybody wins. Then we are not having elections. So for me, the point is the rain started beating us the moment we had that handshake, because that handshake confused all of us. And then after that handshake, we saw there was something happened. There was conflict between our president and our deputy president. And all these other shenanigans that you're seeing going forward with the MPs and purported spokesmen of the president or otherwise, what is happening is that they are fighting battles that are not theirs. So the first thing is that this conflict must be resolved by the president acknowledging there is an issue between myself and the deputy president. We must sit down together, being, the office holders of these two offices, and then we have to agree on the way forward. Then you will see all these other things starting to, to evolve into a place where we are using issue-based politics and not necessarily driven by emotions. So it has to start from the head of the state, and he must acknowledge that there is an issue with his between the partnership that they have with the deputy president, and they must sit down together and decide on how.
Let's get Honorable Sankok respond to that, Gloria.
Yes, Linda, Gloria have said that by the mere fact that we went for a handshake with the opposition leader, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, is an indication that there is a problem within our party or within the electoral system or within the election of 2017, which is totally wrong.
Okay.
Because our party was formed on the basis of handshake. Our symbol is a symbol of unity,
right,
that we wanted to unite the whole country. We wanted to build bridges of unity among communities, among tribes, among leaders. So for us to reach out to the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, who was our fiercest competitor, was just an indication of continuing with our party slogan of Tuko Pamoja. Tuko Pamoja means we are together as a country. We are not apart as a country.
But there's Jubilee Asili that speaks otherwise.
And so on. Yeah. So what we are saying is that Building Bridges initiative is just to improve, so that what we witnessed in 2017, where there was a perceived fake swearing in should not repeat again, because that will have been a recipe to chaos. If we had used force to say that it is a treason for somebody to swear himself in, then it will have taken this country the path of civil war. We didn't want that one. And as a party that want to build bridges among leaders and among tribes, we will extend our friendship, our hand of friendship, that is Jubilee, to any other leader. We have extended to Kalonzo Musyoka, we have extended to Gideon Moi, we have extended to Etangula, we will extend to even Ekuru Okoth.
Are you comfortable with the handshake?
100% comfortable with the handshake, because it brought peace, it brought calm in this country. If it goes on that way, then we are comfortable with the handshake, we are comfortable with the BBI process, and we will bring BBI that will unite Kenyans, not create position for individuals to massage the egos of individuals. No.
All right. Is that cause for worry that we might be creating positions for individuals? Is it likely that BBI is going to address the issues of the Kenyans? Philip Mwangali, do you suppose Honorable Sankok is genuinely for the handshake from what he says?
You have to the matter.
That's why we want to see. That's why we want to see as a truth meter. Philip, do you have a truth meter to that?
Sometimes I feel like these politicians, if we had the power with ourselves, we would lock them up in a room and whip them until they come to their senses. Because the things that they speak about in different forums keep changing. Honorable Sankok will talk about, in a lovely way, the handshake. He'll talk about the handshake and BBI in the manner that he has. But when he gets to another forum, it will be a different story. And that is how, our politics are structured. Politicians are always, almost always dishonest with us and with themselves, really. Because if they rubbish the claims of disunity within their own outfit, that is Jubilee, and first I must begin by saying that we have a fallacy that is called political party. I think I've said before that we have small and medium enterprises that have camouflaged themselves into party. And so the wrangle within Jubilee is not really a party position wrangle or policy and ideology conflict. It is really on ownership. Who owns Jubilee Party? Who has invested more in the party? So if Honorable Sankok and his team are not even willing to admit to the very basic and open conflict that is in their camp, then I don't understand how they will also admit that we have issues as a country. We have underlying issues. And when you talk about elections, we are not talking about who won and who lost. We are talking about electoral injustice and electoral malpractice. So if we do not address those issues, it will not matter whether it is Raila Odinga on the ballot or whether it is Philip Mwangali on the ballot. It only matters that we are paying fidelity to the rule of law. We are adhering to our electoral laws and conventional practices that should aid us in getting to a credible election. And that's it. The other bit that is also important to address is the issue of ethnocentrism, because that is our problem. The fact that we can have a few leaders whip up emotions in their background, and they're not doing this unilaterally. It is a problem if we have a leader who comes up and speaks to his tribe, and then his tribe that, by the way, we should be acting in this way. That is a problem, because it's not just the leader that has an issue, it is also the whole community. And that means that it's the whole country. So we must really look at the issue. It is not about individuals. It is not about a BBI program, which in my view will not help us solve anything in this country. It is about looking at the underlying issues. And for me, I have always said this, our issue is the moral software of this country.
Right, and eyes of the prize, they say, and in this case, the prize for many is 2022 politics. Picking up from what Philip has said, what are we likely to be treated to come 2022?
First of all, Linda, please, I would like you to connect me with my friend Philip.
All right.
I've never met him.
I will purpose to do that.
I've heard that he have a truthometer. He can actually know what is genuinely from the heart and what is not genuinely in the heart. And the problem that we have as a world, not even as the country, is fake friends. So I will really want to use the truthometer to know my political genuine friends and fake friends. But going forward, in 2022, we are likely to have a very peaceful election. And we hope the BBI, and that is what all Kenyans hope, that will not create more position, because Punda amechoka, waheshimiwa wamekuwa wengi kuliko raia. What we will actually try to cure is the issue of any electoral injustices and malpractices, so that we can have a genuine, credible, and actually watertight.
Are you telling
election.
us that by the time 2022 comes, we'll have had the BBI, we'll have gone through the referendum process?
Yes.
That is for sure.
That one is for sure.
Will that not be, pushing this down the throat of
it does
Kenyans?
not mean that we'll have a referendum.
Okay.
We'll have the
BBI.
We may decide
that
the amendments can be done through parliament in a very cheaper way.
Right.
We may go to the referendum way if some issues are really pertinent and touching on our constitution. So we'll go through the referendum. But at the end of the day, our constitution is at 10. It requires some amendment. What I know, because I know my president, is that we cannot create position at the apex of leadership. Because in our understanding is that you can only create a maximum of 5 positions.
Right.
That is a president, deputy president, prime minister, and probably 2 deputy prime ministers. That is a position. That is 5 positions.
That will require a referendum.
That one will require
a referendum.
And I know Kenyans will reject, because there is no way you can bring 5 tribes at the apex of leadership and exclude that 7 tribes, because that is not then inclusion, it is exclusion, and that will not bring people together. And again, as I have told you, is that Kenyans want a reduction of the wage bill in our government, which is ballooning every day. So we cannot create more position in the BBI or in the referendum or in any amendment. So we will come together and try to cure the electoral injustice. The electoral injustices have not been because the winner take everything. The winner in any competition, in this case, democracy, a democratic election process is a competition. And in any competition, there must be a winner and a loser.
Right.
Yes, there must be a prize for the winner, and the loser must go and reorganize themselves. The majority will have their way, and the minority will have had their say. In any electoral process that is a competition, the winner will form the government, and the loser will be checks and balance to the government formed by the winner. And there is no way we can say, the only way we can cure violence after election is by allowing the president share power with probably the loser, who will then become the prime minister. Because if we share power in the apex of leadership, the president share power with the prime minister, who will share power with the governor?
Is it a question of sharing, or is it a question of just creating an office where, and I mean, this is what your party leader advocates for anyway, that it shouldn't be a winner takes it all affair.
Yeah, you know, but we are in democracy in Jubilee.
Yes.
And we are allowed in Jubilee to have dissenting voices.
Okay.
Yes, so I can differ with my party leader for the first time.
Okay.
I've never differed with him, that actually we cannot share power in the apex of leadership, excluding sharing of power in governorship. Nakuru, for instance, county is a cosmopolitan. It have the 42 tribes. How do we then the governor of Nakuru share power with? Will we have a prime governor? No, the MCA normally takes everything. It's a winner.
Okay.
Do we and some MCAs have been defeated with 2 votes. Will they have a prime MCA, a prime women rep, a prime member of parliament? No, it is illogical.
Let's get to hear from Gloria.
We can't.
Just how realistic would it be? And one of the key reasons why President Uhuru Kenyatta has, talked about the need for us to go for a referendum or make changes on the constitution is on this basis that, for the longest of time, this winner takes it all has bedeviled us, has gotten us to points where, we have had issues as Kenyans, we have fought as Kenyans. Do you suppose it's realistic to even imagine that, we can have, the opposition party being incorporated somewhere so that they do not feel like they've lost it 100%?
The problem we are experiencing is that we are having the patients diagnose themselves, because who diagnosed that problem and said the problem we have here is on election basis? Which experts came and said this Building Bridges initiative is addressing this particular problem and that is why we need it? You see, the thing that is happening is that our leaders are very pretentious. we know, now it's in the public, and we know that the Building Bridges initiative was just a vehicle to expand the executive. And the moment the cat was out of the bag, when they went round trying to drum up support in these forums where they were trying to say that this is their way of engaging the public, they experienced hostility. And the truth of the matter is that the report is ready. It has been ready. It has not been tabled. Why hasn't it been tabled? Because the drivers of this initiative also understand that the ground is hostile. Kenyans are suffering COVID pandemic. Kenyans are suffering job losses. Or then you want to go and tell them about a referendum that does not address their immediate needs. So they are aware that the ground is hostile, and so they cannot pass this thing as a popular public initiative. They cannot go the referendum way, because there is a risk that Kenyans will say, no, we are not going to participate in this, and we are going to not vote for this thing to go through. So you had the former Prime Minister, who was the driver of this initiative, you had him talk about we are going to Parliament, and we'll try and address the Building Bridges initiative and pass it in Parliament. That's because he's aware that Kenyans are not interested in this initiative. They do not have the eye on expanding the executive. Expanding the executive does not affect their lives. It doesn't mean that their relatives or they themselves will get those positions. So the pretentious nature of saying, one, we have a problem when it comes to elections and we must find a win-win situation. Who diagnosed that problem? Just because we have post-election violence does not mean that the post-election violence was actually instigated from winner gets it all. There are so many behind-the-scene issues that we are seeing come about when you start seeing elected leaders abusing members of other of the head of state, or who, the issues are not necessarily pegged on our election. They're pegged on issues on tribalism. They're pegged on issues on land, and the fact that there has been historical injustices on land, and the implementation of the land reforms has not really been done. They're pegged on issues on devolution, how to ensure that we get the resources all the way down to the ward level. So, to me, Building Bridges initiative is a front. It's a front office that politicians want to use to ensure that come what may, they must be in power. And that's why Kenyans have now said, we are not interested. And by the way, I have a question for Honorable Sankok. Kindly, can you please answer me? If we are extending and shaking hands with everyone, you've said we are shaking hands with Mudavadi, we have shaken hands with who and who, why haven't you not considered that we have a guy called Miguna Miguna, who actually he's a public figure. A lot of Kenyans listen to him. He has been shouting. He's been experiencing all sorts of injustices, including the fact that he cannot come back to his home country. Why are we not calling that guy to the table and saying, okay, we are focusing on national cohesion. Let's sit down here. Let us resolve this issue. Let us shake your hands. This shaking of hands, why is it specific only to certain people of political allegiances? And that's where the problem begins, and we should solve it from that point.
In Philip.
Let me just answer.
All right, okay.
Just shortly.
And remember, as you answer that also,
yes.
Look at these utterances again from the foot soldiers of the Deputy President William Ruto, and he himself, he argues that, the handshake came to distract Jubilee.
Who are the foot soldiers of William Ruto?
We
are Jubilee.
All right.
So there is foot soldiers of Jubilee, and foot soldiers of William Ruto are the foot soldiers of
Jubilee.
Uhuru Kenyatta, because he's the leader of Jubilee. So I want to answer Gloria, that actually we had extended our handshake to every leader that we competed with. That is why I mentioned Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, because they were the political leaders of the political outfit called NASA. And Miguna Miguna is a part of NASA. So we have extended our handshake to them. It is up to them to say that what Miguna have been writing. Because actually, if you see the tweet of Miguna, if you see those tweets abusing our president, and even the family of our president, if he come here, unless he is interested to come and go to jail straight, I really prefer and advise him to stay in Canada and be free. Again, you know, when we were forming the government after 2017 election, we were told people were going to Canaan. So when Miguna sworn in the Right Honorable Raila Odinga as a people president, we tried to Google if there is a country called Canaan. The closest we came to is Canada. That's why we took Miguna to Canada.
Philip, let's have a look at that. And Philip, coming to you, and we are likely to have, yes, change or amendments on the Constitution from what Honorable Sankok says. If we are not going to be treated to a referendum, then that means there's not going to be adjustments on the leadership in terms of, attaining, say, the hybrid system that has been talked about. So then where does this place President Uhuru Kenyatta, who many have argued that probably the need for change of a constitution is probably, they all feel like, he's pretty much young to exit the stage?
First, I don't think we should let, the comments that Honorable Sankok has made slide. I think we have let our politicians get away with very much, and we have normalized, such utterances. And I'm really talking about what he has mentioned concerning Miguna. I think Gloria mentioned a very important issue that, I don't know if Honorable Sankok really has the authority to answer, but going by what he has said, then it really goes to show that what Gloria has mentioned is true, that BBI is not really geared towards integrating the whole nation. It's not geared towards national cohesion. It is really a front for something else. But that said, in answering the question that you've asked, I think when we keep saying that Uhuru Kenyatta is young, then we are really being dishonest with ourselves. Because, if somebody is heading towards 60 and he's in 10 years, he'll be 70, and we still call that person young, then we are getting into what has been referred to in the African continent as presidency being perpetual, so that you can only retire if you're dead. It is a death certificate that is retirement from politics. We have very many people who are well-deserving, people who are qualified, people who can steer this country in different positions. And so for us to insist that Uhuru Kenyatta should continue being in certain positions of leadership just because he has not fallen off his feet, he's not bedridden, then that is really unfortunate. And it also goes to show us that the clamor towards changing the constitution is not an honest one. And I would really want to insist on this. I would always take the opportunity to insist on this, that we do not need to change this constitution. We do not need a new system of governance. We do not need a hybrid of any kind. We have a perfect constitution that, if we implemented, will take us away and out of the pits that we have dug ourselves into. If we are honest with ourselves and audit this constitution for what it is, and audit ourselves for who we are, then we would actually get solutions. But if we camouflage ourselves and we want to paint a picture that we are really interested in something that we are not, then 10 years down the line, or perhaps even less, we'll get ourselves in these very positions, if not worse, because then we would have swept under the carpet issues that we should have dealt with right now. And that I really want to urge my fellow panelist, Honorable Sankok. I know Honorable Sankok. I've followed his actions right from his university days. And I can tell you there has been a tectonic shift, if I may use those words, in the way he expresses himself. These days, you'll hear Honorable Sankok talking about his allegiance to the president. And this is happening with most members of parliament who are allied to the president and not the deputy president. These members of parliament did not swear the loyalty pledge that we had, before. They swore an oath, the oath that is in our schedule to the Constitution, an oath to the Republic of Kenya, not to the president. So I think we really must be honest. And I think, Linda, you should really connect me to Honorable Sankok because he needs my truth meter.
So, Honorable Sankok, as we get to wind up on this subject, yes, and briefly touch on the revenue share stalemate, as you react to what Philip has said, and equally, do you suppose that President Uhuru Kenyatta is pretty much young to exit?
First of all, the handshake with the Right Honorable Raila Odinga was supposed that Right Honorable Raila Odinga will come with his own troops, excluding one in the name of Miguna, then we should ask the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. For us, as Jubilee, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta went with his own foot soldiers, all of us, and we went into the handshake. As for Uhuru Kenyatta being too young to retire, of course he's not old, but I cannot say that he's too young to retire because he is very busy planning for his legacy, that he wants to leave this country with a legacy of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta.
Does he have time?
And now, and you know, the issue of having time or not.
It's important, 2 years to eat.
Yes, so how do you build your legacy? Already, the Standard Gauge Railway is a legacy.
Okay.
Free maternity is a legacy.
Is it? Right.
Free secondary education is a legacy.
Okay.
And 7,000 kilometers of new tarmac is a legacy, including the tarmac to Masai Mara, the tarmac to Moyale, that is 500 kilometers. So it's a legacy.
But not to the extent that you wanted it to be.
We are still, of course, you cannot achieve 100%,
okay.
But 90%.
So Kenyans are being lied to most of the times.
But my friend Philip seemed to have a lot of truth meters. He also know that the president want to extend his term, the president have not said so. Wait for him to say so. But if you can share with us that truth meter, so that we can even measure what Philip mean by saying this, then it will be really of assistance to all of us.
Let's
now,
leave it
coming
to time.
to the revenue sharing formula.
Right.
I want to plead with our brothers and sisters from the so-called populous counties to support the formula that will share resources according to landmass. 1 kilometer, 1 shilling. You know why I say this? We risk creating the largest slums in the world in central Kenya and pockets of western Kenya. Because if we put all our resources and development in one region, then population will follow that development. When it follows that development, it will strain the social amenities, strain all the infrastructure, and we end up having slums. The largest slum in Kenya, the largest slum in the whole world. But because population follow development, it is not development following people. We are here in Nairobi, Linda, not because Nairobi is a highland that is highly productive in terms of food, not because it have underground resources. It is simply because infrastructure, government offices, good hospitals, good schools are here in Nairobi. That is why it is highly populated. So population will always follow development, not development following population. But when you say 1 man, 1 shilling, is like saying development should follow population. There are 35,000 Kenyan immigrants who follow development to a tiny desert peninsula called Qatar. They are working there because of infrastructure that are there. Let us develop every corner of this republic so that we can offload the high population in our slums to those areas. Because the moment you develop northern Kenya, the moment you develop South Rift, then population will go there. And I want to plead with our brothers, the Kikuyu community. You see, we developed a part of Kajiado. You have an MP there. We developed Lamu, and we offloaded high population to Lamu. We have, let us develop the whole country so that, like America, for instance, if you, Linda, have read about America, they were given the United Nations headquarters and the World Trade Center. They didn't build in their capital city. They built it in New York, not Washington, D.C., because they wanted to develop the 4 corners of their country. And that is why they are the superpower. Right. We can develop and become the superpower if we share our resources according to their landmass. Because a country or any nation is defined by 2 parameters. That is territory, landmass, and the population that is there.
All right.
So we can use the population in terms of tyranny of numbers to elect leaders. 1 man, 1 vote. But during sharing of resources, let us also use the other parameter called the landmass, the territory, so that we can develop the 4 corners of our nation and offload the high population in our slums. That is my take.
Let's get Philip's take before we come to you, Gloria. And Philip, what do you make of first, the proposal of Honorable Sankok, and generally what we've been treated to, 10th time and really nothing?
I think it's on this very show, Linda, that I mentioned that I did not really have against senators in them solving this stalemate, because it's been with them for a very long time, and they have shown us that they would rather play sectarian politics than look at the interests of Kenyans and the interests of devolution, for which they have been given a clear mandate under the Constitution. The question is, and I've mentioned this before, the question is not really about landmass or population, one man, one shilling, which is actually an economic fallacy. The question is on equity. And the Constitution is very clear, and that's why I keep insisting we must implement the Constitution, because the Constitution provides that when you are sharing these resources across counties, that sharing must be equitable. You must focus on economic disparities across counties, because in as much as you might have a small county that has a smaller landmass, that county might have had systemic disenfranchisement since independence. So we must really look at economic disparities. We must look at the nature and rate of development in each of those counties. If we gave ourselves that parameter as a point of focus, then 10 years down the line, we will not be talking about counties that have been left behind. We would have cushioned them enough, and we'll be moving together in the same direction and in the same breath. So I think senators have let us down. I have mentioned before that I believe senators are just operating as a hallowed seniors debate club rather than focusing on solving the issues of devolution and buttressing really what the Constitution requires them to do under the Constitution. So I do not believe they will even solve it in the next sitting or whichever sitting. They have told us and they have shown us that they're not really interested in a formula that works for the whole country. It is about tribe, and again, we keep gravitating towards our problems. It goes back to tribe. There's a tribe that feels they are more entitled. There's a tribe that feels they are more populous, and so they are more entitled than the other tribe. There's a tribe that feels they have been marginalized more than the other. So it is really about our ethnocentrism. We find opportunity all the time to pull towards our communities and towards our tribes. It is really politics of greed and selfishness. That is it. Yes, Linda, I'm done.
Gloria, come in.
I think let's not look at tribe as something that is so awful, that is messing up in all our affairs, whether it's political or economical, because these are also, tribe is also the one thing that makes us as Kenyans who we are. It's the one thing that we sell as a culture that attracts tourists. It's the one thing that actually makes us stand out even within the sports and that kind of industry. So we must understand that tribe is not necessarily a negative thing. But back to the revenue share. One of the things that people are not talking about is the percentage that is actually going to the counties. Let's start from there before we talk about how we are going to split that cake. How big of a cake are we getting from the national budget? Because when you look at the figures that are being fronted, they are, I think, amounting to 11%, which is not necessarily, like you said, guided by the Constitution. So again, if we implement the Constitution as we are supposed to implement it, the first thing that will come out clear is that the cake will actually be bigger in order for us now to come and talk about equity, to talk about whether it's population or landmass, and to talk about those that have been marginalized. In terms of the Senate not taking us to where we are supposed to be, I believe let that be the legacy of that house, that it was during their tenure that they were unable to even come together and agree on a revenue allocation budget. So, and then as we're speaking of legacy, I wanted to just clarify to Honorable Sarkok, a legacy is not the work that you do every day. I could be an accountant and every day I actually just type in numbers, put my books together. But a legacy is what you will be remembered for. You won't be remembered for being an accountant, but you will be remembered for being that accountant that was the whistleblower. So when you're talking about the president's legacy, it's not that he has done several thousands of kilometers of roads. It's not that he has put up or policies that are supposed to bring us education that is free. It is actually, what will the people remember you for? And that's why I keep saying, when the president is being sidelined by things such as BBI, handshake, all this, it's sideshows, he must bring back the attention to the Big Four agenda, which I believe should be his legacy. And what does that count on? Food security. What does that count on? Manufacture. That is where he should be paying the most attention to. But when we are focusing on whether we are going to have a referendum or not, then you're confused. Because on one hand, you're saying, this is my legacy, the Big Four agenda. On the other hand, also people are saying, I'm young, I should not resign. If our president, Uhuru Kenyatta, is young, I am 34 years old, a youth advocate. What are we saying about me then?
Pass the time. But again, as you respond to that, let me also ask some of the questions that have been sent by the viewer.
I want just to respond.
All right.
34 years old, that means she's almost not longer youth. So she should not also represent the youth. And then one man, 1 shilling is a political statement that is meant to incite. Because government don't invest on people. Personal investment is a personal responsibility. We are supposed, as a government, to invest on land, build schools on land, build infrastructure on land, roads, rail on land. So, Nairobi, you need money to build maybe 2 more classes in your national school. Right. Narok, we need to build the first national school. You need money to repair your tarmac roads in Nairobi. We need money to build that tarmac road. This money
has been awarded to you for the longest of time in vain.
Yes, so for sure, Nairobi will need money to repair their social amenities. I need money to build the social amenities.
But these monies have been given for years.
Which years?
Well, they say at least Narok has been getting something for years. You cannot tell me that Narok has been running on zero all these years. And because they have nothing to show for that, then the argument is that, well, it's enough is enough.
We have something to show for it, because it does not mean that absolutely we have no tarmac.
All right.
But we have maybe 2 kilometers of tarmac vis-a-vis 30 kilometers of tarmac in Nairobi. So we have an equivalent of the money that have been allocated to us. So what we are saying is that we need more resources to build classes for children who are studying under a tree.
Which will happen?
There is no children who is studying under a tree in Nairobi.
If these monies are given, that will happen?
That exactly will happen.
All right.
Yes. Because if you are talking about corruption maybe in Narok or corruption in Seoul, why don't you talk about corruption in Kamsa? Why don't you talk about corruption in Mafia House?
Right.
Why don't you talk about corruption in NYS, which are national functions?
Mheshimiwa, when you're talking about schools, the argument again, or the reality is that schools are done by the national government and not the county government. So why should the county government require this money?
I just gave you an example, but of course it can be an hospital. Yes, because you have Kenyatta National Hospital, which has a referral hospital in Nairobi. You have Nairobi Hospital. You have so many other Mbagathi Hospital, so many other referral hospitals. I need to build level 5 hospital in the first one.
Mheshimiwa, because of time, let's just pick 2-3 questions and then we get to wind up the session. Kamau Gatwechi says, great show. Does the 22047 SMS platform work? Yes, Gatwechi, it certainly works. And one Callistas asks, which side of political divide does Sankok belong to? Well, at least he says Jubilee. Ask him secondly, tell him that unity amongst politicians is not our unity as people of Kenya. Kenyans are in need of jobs and housing. What does unity amongst politicians leaders has to do with the economy? That is what he asks.
Yeah, unity among your own elected leaders. We are talking about unity of chief, DCs, county commissioners who are appointed. We are talking of unity among your own elected leaders. So it is a unity across the board. It's the unity of Kenyans. Because if you elected so-and-so in Lamu, if you elected so-and-so in Lodwar, then it means you trust that person to represent you, and they represent you in unity. For us as Jubilee, we had our flag bearer, who is Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. When he went for the handshake, it does not mean that alikuwa anatingiza bendera namna hivi. He is our flag bearer, meaning when he went for the handshake, you did so on behalf of all of us in Jubilee, the leadership of Jubilee, and the 8 million voters who voted for us. When Raila came for the handshake, he came as a flag bearer of NASA, representing all the NASA principles, all the NASA leadership, and all the 6 million.
He came or was called for the handshake? Let's get to wind up from there, Mheshimiwa. Thank you so much for the great insights. Gloria Oroba, youth advocate, thank you so much for the great insights. Philip Mwangale, who's a lawyer and also governance expert. And lastly, Honorable David Ole Sankok, nominated member of parliament. It's a wrap on this session. Thank you so much for the feedback. Sadly, we might not be able to go through all of them, but it is time that we cross over to a different segment altogether, Matters Lifestyle, after this short break. Thank you, Gloria, Honorable Sankok.